I look so much like my dad, maybe not now, but what about if I do this?
If you're resemble my dad, maybe not now, but what if I try doing this? If you like classic American comedies, you probably remember the unforgettable Don Knotts. He was the charming and clumsy Deputy Sheriff Barney Fife on the famous 1960s TV show The Andy Griffith Show, a role that won him 5 Emmy Awards. His humor, energetic persona, and memorable facial expressions made him famous and a valued part of the nation. Unfortunately, Don Knotts died in 2006, but in his last moments something very emotional and totally unexpected happened. While he was on his deathbed, his daughter Karen Knotts was right there with him, holding his hands and comforting him during this difficult time. She stayed by his side, remaining strong even as her father, the man who made millions laugh, faced his last moments. But then, in a moment that would change her life forever, Don Knotts whispered a few last words to her. What he said Karen kept to herself for years, but not anymore. What she finally revealed might really surprise you. Keep watching to see what she said. Don Knotts had a tough childhood. Before Don Knotts became a famous actor who won 5 Emmys for his nervous energy and funny roles, he was Jesse Donald Knotts, a boy from a troubled family in Morgantown, West Virginia. Don was the surprise baby in a family that was having a hard time. His mother, Elsie Luzetta Knotts, was 40 years old when he was born. He was the youngest of 4 boys. His father, William Jesse Knott, was a tough farmer who used to be self-sufficient but was gradually falling apart due to schizophrenia and alcoholism. A month before Don got there, the family had to leave their farm. Times were very hard. The Knott family home was not welcoming. His father's mental health issues often became violent. Don later remembered scary times when his father would threaten him with a knife. To handle this, young Don retreated into his imagination, creating a private world that felt safer, funnier, and much more forgiving than his real life. His older brothers, Willis, William, and Ralph, also called Sid, didn't stop him from eating and were almost adults when Don arrived. They had a hard time relating to their much younger sibling. They drank a lot, just like their father. Even though they often criticized Don, he still viewed them as larger than life, especially Sid. Sid had a natural sense of humor and could make the family laugh even during tough times. For Don, Sid was like a brother. He was a personal hero to me. Then disaster happened. Sid died suddenly from a bad asthma attack, leaving a gap in the family and in Don's heart. It was a loss he always remembered. Feeling very lonely, Don found comfort in an unusual friend, a dummy called Danny. Donnie era Mosca Unjugete. He was Don's fictional partner. His imaginary friend became a funny prop. With Danny, Don started doing small things that made others laugh, and he found happiness and confidence in it, even if it was just pretend at first. At Morgantown High School, Don started to open up. He was popular, funny, and even chosen as class president. However, being popular did not eliminate his feelings of self-doubt. He felt thin, poor, and uncomfortable, always sensing that he didn't fit in. However, his passion for performing continued to increase. By the time he finished school, Don was sure he wanted to succeed in show business. He gathered his dreams, his pacifier, and his bravery and went to Manhattan when he was only 18. Sin embargo, la ciudad de Nueva York no dio la bienvenida. His first audition didn't go well, and the big city was tough on a shy kid without any connections. Don cast but not beaten. Don came back home and quickly joined the United States Army during World War II. Ironically, it was there while serving his country that he discovered an unexpected group of people who were interested in him. He acted in Army variety shows, using his humor to lift the spirits of his fellow soldiers. It was his first experience with a real performance, and people enjoyed it. After the war, Don kept pursuing his dream. Instead, he returned to school. He started at West Virginia University and got a degree in education with a minor in speech, graduating in 1948. He became a member of the Phi Sigma Kappa fraternity, improving his public speaking skills and nurturing his inner performer. From that point, opportunities in the world started to expand. Don Knotts lived in the U.S. for almost 3 years. Army from June 1943 to January 1946, served not as a soldier in the trenches but as someone who boosted morale. He was part of the 6,817th Special Services Battalion, a group created not for fighting but for humor. What does he do for work? Make the soldiers laugh. And he did, traveling across the Pacific to perform in the Army's touring variety show Stars and Gripes. He wasn't just a silly person in uniform, he had received awards. When he finished his service in the army, he had received several awards: the World War II Victory Medal, the Philippine Liberation Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal with 4 Bronze Service Stars, the American Campaign Medal, the Good Conduct Medal, a marksman badge for the M1 carbine, and the Honorable Service lapel pin. He might have joined the army to get away from small-town life and a difficult childhood, but he left with a clear sense of purpose, confidence, and a strong stage presence. After being discharged as a technician grade 5, which is like a corporal, Knott returned to a place he knew well, West Virginia University. Esta vez fue diferente. Él no era solo un estudiante. He was a veteran with stories to share, skills to improve, and a stage presence shaped by crowds during the war. On campus he enjoyed being in the spotlight, performing often and gaining back his confidence. However, something different occurred during this second time in college. Something more personal. Enamorado. Knott met and married Kay Metz, which would influence his life after college. With a degree in education and a minor in speech, Knott packed up his hopes again and with his wife by his side headed back to New York City, determined to succeed. This time he wasn't an unknown candidate. Thanks to the military contacts he made during his time in service, opportunities started to arise. He performed at comedy clubs, telling jokes in smoky venues. He got a part in the radio western Bobby Benson and the B-Barbie Riders as Windy Wales, a sarcastic know-it-all character known for his quick jokes and good timing. He made his television debut with a regular role on the soap opera Search for Tomorrow, which aired from 1953 to 1955. It wasn't a comedy, but it put him on screen and into homes all over America. Pero fue en 1956 cuando realmente despegó todo. That year Knott got a place on the Steve Allen Show, joining a comedy group that would change everything. He gained fame for portraying a jittery, wide-eyed, anxious man in Allen's fake interviews. Era oro puro. The audiences enjoyed it. The character was close to Knott's. Nervous, thin, uncertain, but he transformed those qualities into amazing results. Behind the scenes, his connection with fellow rising star Andy Griffith was already growing strong. From 1955 to 1957, the two worked together on Broadway in No Time for Sergeants. Knott acted in 2 funny roles, a surprised preacher and a clumsy corporal named Manuel Dexterity. When the play was made into a movie in 1958, Knott played his original role again, capturing attention with his nervous charm, while Griffith took the main part. That role, an Air Force test administrator gradually losing control in front of a simple country person, suggested what was about to happen. It was the start of one of the best comedy pairs in American television history. Don Knotts had finally come. Don Knotts' first wife. When Catherine Metz met Don Knotts, she was not just an ordinary person, she was the daughter of a minister, intelligent, sophisticated, and taught to follow the rules. She had nothing in common with Don, a skinny, nervous kid who made jokes and came from a tough background. Pero el amor no le importa el papel. Knotts didn't give up. He approached with charm, humor, and sharp wit. He impressed her with his best content, and soon enough she was captivated. Catherine ended her engagement and began dating Don. 2 años después se casaron. Pero el amor era solo una parte del plan. Knotts still wanted something bigger, something he had dreamed of since he was a child, when his only audience was his imaginary friends. He wanted to succeed, not just get by, to truly succeed. In 1949, with a new wife and only $100, Knotts made another big decision. They left West Virginia and went to New York City, a place that had already taken a toll on him before. This time was not very different. He knocked on the same types of doors, and once more the casting directors said no. Very awkward, very nervous, very strange. He didn't have the looks or presence they wanted, and even his comedy, improved by performing at war events and college shows, didn't seem to connect in the city that never sleeps. He continued working hard. Slowly small roles started coming in, mostly for radio work. One of his first regular roles was in a children's western show called Bobby Benson and the B-Barbie Riders, where he played Windy Wales, a quick-speaking character known for his sharp comments. It wasn't fancy, but it earned money. And most importantly, it motivated him. Knotts might not have become famous quickly, but he was making progress. With patience and determination, one joke after another. After 7 years of work, Don finally landed his first big role in the Broadway comedy, No Time for Sergeants. Even though he had a big moment on Broadway, his most important experience from the show was meeting his co-star Andy Griffith, who would later change his life forever. Things were getting better for Don, but every positive situation has its downsides. His role on Broadway gave Knotts several new opportunities. However, he looked very different from the usual leading man. He was often given silly sidekick roles that made the main stars of his projects look even more heroic. Most actors disliked the thought of being stuck playing just one type of character, and Don probably felt the same way. However, his most significant role would connect him even more to being the goofy sidekick, The Andy Griffith Show. In 1960, Knotts visited his old friend Andy Griffith during the pilot episode of a new show and came up with an idea. He called Griffith and jokingly said he would need a deputy for the show and it should be Griffith. Griffith linked Knotts to the show's production, and the rest, as they say, is history. The Andy Griffith Show was where he played his most famous and celebrated role as Sergeant Barney. The show might have been a big hit, but Knotts' personal life was the opposite. Knotts' chemistry with Andy Griffith was obvious, and you can see it for yourself by watching a rerun of The Andy Griffith Show on TV Land. However, his wife didn't blend in with the people on the show as well. Reports indicate that she had a difficult relationship with Andy's wife, and unfortunately, it appeared that she also struggled to get along with her husband. TV viewers enjoyed Knotts' role as Griffith's co-star, with both of them bringing laughter and warmth to American homes weekly. Making the show was tough, and Knotts put a lot of effort into his comedy. If the result of his own relationships is any indication, he didn't take care of his own home very well. Long days of 10 hours on the set of a popular show eventually took a toll on Don Knotts' family, particularly his wife, Catherine. As Knotts became more famous and busy, the two drifted further apart. They got divorced 13 years after getting married and having 2 kids. It might have been that Knotts was simply too busy for his family, but it felt like there were darker reasons behind it. Don Knotts had a hard time with anxiety. Knotts had a hard time dealing with his life as a comedian long before he became famous in the 1960s. In fact, when he did smaller live shows, he often couldn't get out of bed for hours or even days before the performance. He often acted as a nervous man on stage for fun. In reality, his own personal fears were not very funny at all. Knotts suffered from anxiety, and it impacted him so much before performances that doctors prescribed him anxiety medicine in the 1950s. Like many Hollywood actors, it was not surprising that Knotts became too reliant on pills, adding addiction to his problems. Maybe he could have handled life with anxiety, but Knotts had much bigger problems. Knotts often felt sick, and it was so bad that he showed signs of being a hypochondriac. In short, he fooled himself into believing he was sick when he was actually fine. This definitely affected his personal life, and he certainly made an effort to handle it. Eventually, things became so difficult that he felt he had to seek help from professionals. The professionals were able to help, but in the end, Knotts' mind had already been tricked too much. Yes, his new fame brought him the wealth, women and success he had always wanted, but his past still troubled him. Knotts struggled with memories from his tough childhood, and even yelled at God during a therapy session as he sought a way to heal. Feeling sick, anxious, and depressed, Knotts also had trouble sleeping. All his mental issues eventually caused him to leave the Andy Griffith Show. Don Knotts won 5 Emmy Awards for his part in the Andy Griffith Show during his life, but the show's success and his close friendship with Andy weren't enough to make him stay. The show went on for a few more seasons, but Knotts left in 1965. He thought the series would finish after 5 seasons. He had a 5-year contract and started looking at other options, including a movie deal with Universal. Although he was willing to go back to the show, he ended up concentrating on his film career. Although he left as a main cast member, Knotts came back to the Andy Griffith Show for a few guest appearances in the following seasons. Viewers believed that the actor leaving lowered the quality of the Andy Griffith Show. His daughter mentioned that Knotts left because of the daily pressure of working in television. Filming a television show is definitely hard work, but it seems that wasn't the only thing keeping Knotts busy. Knotts, the guy who gets along well with women.
Even though his first marriage ended poorly, Knotts didn't let that stop him from dating. He often played supporting roles in movies, but in real life he dated many women, and other celebrities saw him as a true ladies' man. He might have been very successful in dating, but unfortunately, it went to his head. In 1969, Knotts got the main role in the racy comedy movie, The Love God. He played a magazine owner, who brought his business back to life by publishing more exciting content, making him a popular bachelor. Knotts was excited to take on a role different from the beloved Sergeant Barney, but he didn't portray the bachelor in the movie as convincingly as he did in real life. Some critics liked the movie, but it ended up failing, and many theaters did not show it at all. Audiences simply couldn't see Knotts as a Don Juan, and he never attempted a role like that again. He didn't appear ready to quit his career as a leading man, but based on his next actions, perhaps he should have. Knott focused on movies, and even signed a big contract with Universal. He starred in several comedy films in the following years, including the incredible Mr. Limpet y el Astronauta Ratio. None of these films were praised as much as his work on TV, and Knotts noticed it. He tried to start over, but wasn't very successful. The Don Knotts Show first appeared on TV in 1970. Knotts had agreed to host his own variety show, and everyone expected it to be a big hit. However, since Knotts was up against many other popular variety shows at the time, it was a big failure. He had to accept that his career wouldn't turn out as he had imagined in his biggest dreams. After 10 years of dating many beautiful women, Knotts probably got worn out. Now he has fallen in love again, this time with the lovely Lorelei Schuchner. Most of their relationship was kept private, but it was clear that Knotts' life kept getting worse. He just couldn't manage to hold everything together. El Diagnostico. With his career steady and his love life sorted out, Knotts should have been able to celebrate. But he quickly understood that he was having trouble with everyday tasks, like reading, driving, and even recognizing faces. His vision was unclear. When he finally went to see doctors, the reality was worse than he had expected. Doctors found out that Knotts has macular degeneration. The comedy star was losing his eyesight, and hearing that news quickly could upset anyone. Sadly, Knotts was the same. He might have been concerned that blindness could end his career, but his eyesight wasn't the biggest issue. The thought of going blind made him feel very low. According to his wife, Laura Lee, the diagnosis motivated him to fulfill a sort of bucket list. Whatever was on his to-do list, Knotts was definitely feeling down, and he let his worries and frustration impact the people he cared about the most. It was too much for Laura Lee. He and Laura Lee got divorced in 1983, after nearly 10 years of marriage. She believes that his upcoming blindness and his strong reaction to it were the final blow. Fortunately for Knotts, he could pay for excellent care, and had eye surgery that eventually improved his vision. Sadly, more problems were waiting ahead. We all have our bad habits, and one of Knotts was that he smoked. The habit was very popular among other celebrities while he was in Hollywood. To his credit, he eventually gave up the habit as he got older, maybe because the risks became more recognized. Pero el daño ya estaba hecho, y su intento de reforma llegó demasiado tarde. Doctors found out that Knott had lung cancer in the early 2000s, even though he had stopped smoking over 10 years earlier. After all, he had overcome blindness, and so felt optimistic about his survival. Maybe that is why he dealt with it differently. Even when it was clear that he needed chemotherapy, Knotts kept the seriousness of his diagnosis from his children. He was known for making everyone laugh, including his kids, and probably wanted to keep things cheerful. Knotts was confident that he would overcome his cancer. He clearly remained hopeful, enough that he still went ahead with a big life change. The Woman Who Has Everything. In 1987, Knotts was involved in a sitcom named What a Country. He was already in his 60s, and production brought in a young and beautiful actress, Francie Yarborough, to help Knott memorize his lines. Even though the show wasn't very impressive, meeting Frances must have been special for him, especially based on how he acted when he saw her again. Even with their big age gap, the two fell in love. Frances said she eventually fell in love with his vulnerability, and the two got married in 2002. Sadly, we'll never really know if this was the love Knotts was always looking for, as they didn't have enough time together. In 2006, Knott's health took a sad turn. The chemotherapy didn't work to fight his cancer, and he had additional problems caused by his cancer diagnosis. His condition got worse, and he could no longer be helped by staying in the hospital, so he went home. Whether he was dying or not, Knotts continued his playful behavior until the very end. His last wife, whom he was married to for just 4 years, inherited millions in property after he died. She left her time with him feeling fuller than ever. What did the daughter of Don Knotts say? If there was ever a man who lived for laughter, it was Don Knotts. He stayed true to who he was until the very end. Not fame, not awards, not even Barney Fife. What really defined Don Knotts was his strong ability to make people laugh, even when he had every reason not to. In his last days, while in the hospital, and feeling weak, Don Knotts held on to the character he had portrayed throughout his life. The solo performance with perfect timing. His daughter Karen said that even as he got closer to the end, he still found ways to tell jokes and keep everyone laughing. When he was dying, she remembered that he was making us laugh really hard. He was really dying, but he did or said something that made my stepmother and me burst out laughing. But in that raw moment, Karen did something she now regrets. She left the room quickly, not because she was sad, but because she was laughing so much that she couldn't bear the idea of doing it in front of her dying father. I thought, I don't want to be standing in front of my beloved father, who is dying and laughing. Years later, she told the story in an interview with Closer Weekly. A director friend, Howard Storm, gave a different point of view. You should have stayed and laughed a lot. That's what comedians live for, Karen said. Ella dijo que tenía razón. I should have just stayed there and laughed loudly, because that's exactly what Don would have wanted. Don Knotts was not only humorous in movies, he was funny all the way through. In an interview with the Emmy TV legends, Don talked about the source of his humor. I believe it was because I grew up with comedy, especially with my brother Shadow. I believe it has become a part of who I am. I don't think I ever really thought about it on purpose. It became second nature. Instinctive, that's a word that often appears when people mention Don Knotts. His daughter Karen put it best when she said, being funny was just something so natural. It was a gene, or well, I'm not sure what it was, except that it was just a wild and natural sense of humor. He didn't practice being warm. You'll know estudioso humor. It came out of him easily, just like breathing. He didn't aim to make others laugh. Era algo que tenía que hacer. In the end, Don Knotts performed for the last time, just like he had done in all his previous shows, with a smile, a joke, and the aim of making his audience feel a bit happier. Even though his daughter left during his last joke, the laughter he created will be remembered for a long time. Don Knotts gave us more than just memories. He brought us joy in memorable characters, bringing us together once again. Even though time and distance made Don Knotts and Andy Griffith grow apart over the years, the connection they formed during the Andy Griffith Show never went away. In Knotts' last days, that connection quietly came back, just as important, and just as strong. Griffith went to Don's bedside at UCLA Medical Center, determined to say goodbye to their friendship. Even though Cans couldn't talk, Griffith knew that his old friend could still listen to him. I was with him until around 6 or 6:30 that evening. Griffith mentioned in a Larry King interview that he couldn't reply, but I did. I told him I loved him, and asked him to breathe, keep breathing. Jess, the nickname Jess was not known to the public. Don had once told Andy that his real name was Jesse, a name he never liked. But Griffith, being Griffith, softly took it back in that personal special moment of goodbye. He told me once, Andy said, and I always called him Jess. In reply, Knotts slightly shifted his shoulder, showing that he was listening and still present. It was tiny but clear. Griffith, always the perceptive friend, understood. Later in the interview, King asked if they realized it was the end. I'm afraid we did, Griffith said sadly. No lo hicimos, no lo sabía, hasta ese momento. We were there, and everyone at UCLA treated us very well. Griffith said that while he was waiting by the emergency room, he and others heard the doctor tell Don's wife, Francie, that his heart had stopped in the ambulance, but had been restarted. Sí, lo sabíamos, dijo Griffith. It was approaching. Don Knotts died on February 24, 2006, at the age of 81. Many performers see Don Knotts as an inspiration. No matter how he viewed his own success, he didn't accomplish everything he planned, but he achieved much more than many others in his situation. A statue in his honor is located in his hometown of Virginia, and you can still see him on TV and movies on many channels and streaming services. What are your thoughts on Don Knotts? Did his character on the Andy Griffith Show ever make you chuckle? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Si te gustó este video, recuerda don like, compartir y suscribir en nuestro canal. No olvides ver el próximo video en tu pantalla. Te va a gustar.